Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Trade Life podcast by Project Network. I'm your host Ian McFadden, and I have with me here today the great and venerable Connor Malloy. Connor, what's your the hashtag or your handle? It's design, build, educate, correct?
It is, yeah. Design.build.educate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit insight into that name, what you kind of do, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the handle really is, it's mainly Instagram, but we do have some YouTube videos for students. Design Build Educate is really what one of my practices at the college. I teach at a trade school in Toronto. And the design side is my background is largely in design. I studied interior design and architecture and then moved on to building. So my family does and what I grew up doing is building. And then with that is education. So we do teach our student group design language for how to be better builders and communicators with the design professionals, and also building from plan sets, learning how to interpret, learning how to communicate physically and build skill and experience around building structures and homes, and then education. And that's for me really a highlight in how I practice. But when you run teams and you teach carpentry and you run really any company, you have to have education. You have to have standard operating procedures, which you're teaching your team members. So that's kind of what it encompasses. And encompasses the kind of things that we
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And I think for today's purpose, I really want to hone in on that education piece. For anyone that isn't familiar with Connor, I was first introduced to you. I can't even remember exactly how, but it was more related to the building science side of stuff. You have a deep love of building science. I have a deep love of building science. I don't want to at all on today's podcast to get into that because it's not the intention of what we're talking about.
Sure.
But anybody that's interested, check out Connor's other stuff because there's a lot of really cool stuff around a building science and applications and all that kind of stuff. On the education front, that's where I really want to dive in because what we want to do on this podcast is support continuing education, new entrants into the field, providing resources. Speaking to your group of students at George Brown was the first group of students that we were able to present Project Network to.
Yeah.
And I want to say we signed up almost every student in that class has created an account. And we've seen a
Good
number
turnout.
of people. It was fantastic. And we've seen it, I think, truly resonate with a number of them because there's not just like empty accounts that got created. There's a number of people that have actually been on there engaging, posting. I've seen some of them commenting. So I think we did sort of hit the nail on the head with a little bit of that utility that we're trying to create. But from your standpoint, that education piece, early entrance, where do you see sort of the biggest challenges from you get somebody young, you teach them, you give them some bare skills, and then they go out into the community at large and they need to find jobs and they need to become productive employees. Talk to me about that sort of process, gaps, some of the things that we can do to improve that.
Okay. So we call it a wicked problem, right?
Yeah.
So first off, let's talk about who our students are. So I teach it's a college. So our students are post-secondary. They've come from high school. Median age coming into first year is probably 18 years old, some cases 17. And we have a 2-year program and a 3-year program. So the time they're graduating, they're 19 to 20 years old. That's kind of who our median age student is. What I think is surprising are the students coming to technical colleges. So we are a trade school, part of George Brown College. So it has culinary and business and design and architecture and skilled trades. The exciting and the hard part about that is most students do not come from a technical high school. So when they are coming to find us, we're their first opportunity to try skilled trades, either because of their parents aren't in it. It's really exposure. So the surprising factor is if you look at our first year intake, that's 125 students. And we have in second year, same number. So out of 125 students, when we start doing that initial assessment in week 1, week 2, job site safety, tool safety, about 10 to 15 in that group of 125 can tell you why at the end of the tape measure, oh, there we go. Why at the end of the tape measure moves back and forth like that, right? You and I know why it does that. The other 95 people, it seems like it's just broken, right? It's a manufacturing defect. Out of that same 125 doing tool safety, under 25, and probably under 15 really have experience using a skill saw or something called a sidewinder. That kind of tells you who our student is coming in and shows you, I think, the gap in exposure to then build experience in people under 18. And I think that's the challenge of where we are right now is we are one of the largest, if not the largest, skilled trades for carpentry in Canada. We have 300 students just in carpentry per year through a number of programs and apprenticeship. That's the biggest. But majority of students coming in have very little exposure to almost none. And that for me is the problem because we're getting the ones that were interested enough to sign up and come to find us. But what happened to the other thousands that aren't with us?
Yeah. Now, do you see that as being an issue? Like, I guess talk to me about how where that issue is, because we hear a lot about like shop classes getting shut down.
Sure.
There's all these
Yeah.
conversations around just
Well,
society in
I'll
general.
tell you about
Yeah.
I'll tell you about my hometown. You tell me about your hometown. When I was in public school, so when I say public school, that's grade 1 to 8. My public school had a full wood shop with table saws, lathes, and we made boxes. So I called it exposure. And then now that's gone. My high school had a kind of like a model making scale shop. That's also gone. There were 3 technical high schools, and those would have machine shops and welding. They would also have things like mechanics, but full carpentry labs. 2 of those are no longer practicing those things. So if your town is similar, that means the amount of students being exposed to building with your hands or thinking physically and problem solving and building things is greatly reduced. So it's up to that student and their parents to really help them see that career path and maybe get them to a technical college. So I think this is a challenge with exposure.
Yeah, and that's probably, I mean, we're not going to solve that problem here and now, but I think likewise, so growing up, my 1 to 8 school, we had a shop. We didn't have table saws and lathes and stuff, but I think we had a bandsaw and we did some stuff. By the time I got to high school, there was nothing. Like, I went to an academic high school in Toronto, and just down the road was the technical high school. And even I remember as of grade 8, it was the smart kids went to academic and the dumb kids, anybody that's not watching this, I'm air quoting those, went to the technical school, right? And it was this very early bifurcation of the population. And what that did was it created an entire group of kids that believed the trades were not a high intelligence career path, right? And I think that for me, I think is the thing that we need to change, right? Like, let's get more funding. Let's change the way, let's bring back shop class. But we need to convince society as a whole that the trades are a valuable career path, right? So you've got your 125. Do you know what is motivating them to get into the trades? Like, you said most of them, they don't have that early exposure. What do you think is their reason for going in?
I mean, it's hard because we talk about teaching to the students, so it's hard to generalize as a group, but some of them are because they really see, I think it's a fun career path. You get to build things, you get to make things. It is still quite applied and technically challenging. I think that part's exciting. We do collect some students where they've been probably pushed into this because of maybe lower academic standing to explore other opportunities. And then 3, we do find a lot of people actually in that kind of career change of they've went to school for something else. The most fun they've ever had was high school summers, building decks or doing that other thing that's physical, and they want to come back and change. So it's probably in those 3 groups of, probably half of them are there by choice. A quarter of them are there because it's the opportunity that's been presented, and a quarter are probably changing from something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's powerful. And that was my story. I went to school, I did all that. I had an office job and I freaking hated it. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I went and that's how I discovered carpentry. But same thing, outside of like grade 8 shop class, building like popsicle stick bridges, I had no exposure. right? And it was just, I love the idea of carpentry, but
And
um,
uh, and I think that's kind of the challenge we're in right now is if you speak to most builders, what they're looking for is the typical job application says 5 years experience, right? And someone with that kind of thing tells you, I want to be able to hire you. I want to be able to put you on a job, make money tomorrow, and have you kind of be pretty self-sufficient. So I call that kind of an expertise level. And our challenge of getting that kind of person is they don't get expertise until they have experience, and you can't put experience till you get exposure. And when you don't have exposure early on, how do you know it's anything you actually want to get experience with?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so the last episode that I shot was with Kyle, our VP of construction. We talked a lot about that, and this was a topic that kind of came up. So I won't rehash it here with you, but I think anybody listening, listen to that episode. We talked a little bit about um, changing that perception. And for us, I know we've found on the Timber Solutions front, a good apprentice can be your most profitable person, but you have to understand how to structure billable rates. You have to understand how to deploy that person, and you have to understand how to improve their skill set. And if you can't do any of those things, then yeah, they're not going to be a great investment. But if you can do
Yeah.
that properly, they are an incredible investment and can ensure the long-term health of your company. Right?
Yeah. And for that reason, though, you just described why being in skilled trades needs smart people. If you are running a company successful enough to have apprentices, likely means you have licensed carpenters. That means you have a team. If you understand how to do markup on your cost of goods sold, that includes, yes, the labor rate, it includes your soft costs for carrying them, and you know how to make money on them. That means you understand how the mechanics of finance work. And then you have training involved to mentorship those people. That tells you why this needs smart people. Is you need to know the commodity level thing is actually the building part. The hard part is actually running a company, remaining profitable, investing in your people, training, good client experience. Like that requires a really high level person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And those are all things that we're going to build out on Project Network as courses. Because I think those require a lot more detailed and like some visual examples. But let's talk for a bit now to that apprentice or that very early stage person. They've taken your course, they've taken another course, they're looking to get their first job. Advice, tips, tricks. What does a successful candidate look like?
Sure. I think so. We actually have a course on this at the college. It's called Careers in Construction, is to help students really have conversation. So what I really implore them to do is find the 3 to 5 companies you're interested in. And that could be starting with going to, so we're both based in around Toronto. The home builder network is called Build. You go to Build. They have a renovation awards or home building awards every year. Look at the last 5 to 7 years of winners. That tells you likely that company is, you can actually see what they build, learn their team formats look like. They're successful enough to have great projects, great accounting, again, good practices. Those are some mechanisms to find, reputable companies. And then you have conversations. And outside of them actually hiring, your initial job right now is just to learn. So call that like an informational interview. So you're saying, I know you're not hired at the moment, but do you mind? I'm a young grad of George Brown or of Fanshawe, some other school in Ontario. And we're looking for some advice just on what a successful candidate looks like with you and what the role looks like. Can you have spare 15 minutes? And you take those conversations and you consolidate them and you kind of look for patterns. These companies are looking for these 3 to 5 things. I've got 2 of them, which is killer. But for me to be more competitive, should probably go look at this other one. So I'd say just to most young grads and apprentices, rather than guessing what employers want, you need to actually speak to them. The needs of a residential framing company are very different than that of a full service renovator, very different than that of a steel stud and drywall contractor in tenant outfit projects. Very different teams, very different proficiencies. So first you have to know who you're applying to and actually speak to them.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I think for anybody outside of the Toronto area, there's home builder associations everywhere. Like basically everywhere in North America will have a home builder association that sort of oversees your location. That's fantastic advice. I hadn't even thought of that. I definitely did not do that when I was first trying to get into the trades. But yeah, find the reputable contractors, the reputable builders, because there's a lot of terrible builders out there. A lot of terrible, a lot of
Yeah,
let's say a lot of terrible employers, right?
sure.
And if you can get caught, and you can get mistreated, and you can get sort of led down a path where like this is not. You might get sort of led into believing that this is the industry, and I think that's one of the things that we really want to make sure that we change is. And I will say, like, Mike Holmes does a good job of he does a good job of highlighting like the really crappy contractors and the potential pitfalls, but he also does a good job of highlighting the better and like what a good contractor can look like, right? And I think if you're finding an award winner, they're doing something right, right?
It's a starting point. So that I think that's the first part, just to get because here's what doesn't work. You've worked for a company that had a very updated, let's call it, website and social presence, correct? Yes. Would you describe most builders having up-to-date websites?
No,
No.
no.
Do you think their websites, even if they're updated, really describe their company, their culture, their actual services they deliver versus
Nope,
marketing speak? No.
nope.
So if we log on to ChatGPT right now or some kind of platform and ask the algorithm to crawl and find 3 to 5 companies to go speak to, it's going to go to the resources out there. And those resources made by the builders are often not that great. So finding reputable sources that list companies and to be members of most of these home builder groups, you have to have projects, you have to have a minimum warranty periods, you have to have good standing with the BBB. It's the basics. So that kind of cuts through the middle of who to talk to. But after those conversations, as you said, you want a good place to find and build good habits. You don't know what bad habits look like yet, but going to a job site, doing a job site tour, meeting that builder only in their office and getting hired on the spot and then going to the job site and it's an absolute SHIT show, you can see it. Is that job clean? Are people wearing PPE or is it frowned upon? Are you laughed at because you showed up with a bucket on your head? Is there a proper job site bathroom if you're trying to get people of different backgrounds and to work on your job site? Are all these practices there? Do the scaffold actually have the stanchions and guardrails on the top platform? No? Well, guess what? Probably challenging habits to learn here. So what does that look like, right? Because you are going to pick up, if you're going to work there for 6 months to 2 years, all of those things that are on the job site, you're going to learn how to do. And when you go and leave, it's going to be hard to break them. So find your first place should just be healthy to work at and safe, because that's where you can pick up good habits.
Yeah, absolutely. The safety one is incredibly important, and one that it's hard to, especially for if you have no experience, it's hard to really tell if it's a safe place until you gain a little bit of experience. There's some obvious ones there around proper scaffold to set up and all that. But if you haven't been taught that, you might not even know what to look at. But those can be major red flags. But the smaller ones are going to be, so my very first job in the trades, I got on like Craigslist or something like that, right? I was just like, look, I just wanted employment. I wanted some experience. And this guy calls me up and he's like, I got a contract to build a bunch of decks. So I went up somewhere. I can't remember. I met him there. And it was him and this other guy. And they were just like hiring sort of labor help. And my first experience was the guy that worked with him put a piece of sheet metal on the ground, and he grabs his grinder and he goes start cutting through it. And I'm staring at him and I'm like, the cord for the grinder is under that sheet metal. My first day, I'm like for within the first hour. And he goes, and does he not cut right through his own cord? Sparks everywhere. I'm just like, oh my God, this doesn't seem great. I didn't know any better. I'm like, I don't know. Nobody got hurt. I didn't say anything. I kept working. I think it was a week or two. We pumped out a bunch of decks. Ended up learning he hired some other good carpenters that I actually learned a couple things from. End of the job comes by. He's going to pay us. He was paying us cash. And he goes, you talked too much with those guys. So I'm not going to pay you for that one day. I was like, excuse what? Like what? What do you mean? And he just didn't pay me for a day. And there's nothing I could do. Right? He's sitting in his car. He just hands me some cash, and I was like, it's short. And he's like, that's all. I'm not giving you anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just like,
back
okay.
back to Mike Holmes. It's like contracts. Do you please look for somewhere that actually gives you a job description, so you know, when am I doing well, what am I being measured against, and when I feel like I'm being underpaid or I'm worth going to the next step, I can say, here are the 12 things on this list that you asked for this role to do. I'm killing 12 of them, and I'm doing 2 more. We're ready to talk about the next thing. Versus this other person, probably the measure of performance or measure of succeeding is this elusive list that no one has, but only he does.
it,
And, it's like,
it
that's
was,
wild.
yeah, it was whether he felt like he made money, I think. And he was just, I don't know,
Well,
young opportunity to
yeah,
stick some more cash in his pocket. He saw an opportunity. So, but yeah,
yeah.
it's,
The
so,
first job I had that wasn't with my dad was a summer working for another renovator. He needed someone to work for them for the summer, was really excited to get someone like myself who had a couple years experience working with really good teams. Came to the different, it's funny going to someone else's job and seeing how they're set up. And so we're building a deck, and he asked me to go cut some pieces, and I set him on the deck, use that as a service to cut from. He had that Makita saw that everyone had for a while, and I set it down on the deck, and this thing took off. It crawled across the deck and almost hit him, and he yelled at me. I'm in shock at the moment because the saw almost cut him by literally crawling across the deck, and he yells at me because I should have checked to find out that his guard didn't work and his brake didn't work on his saw. And that was my fault for not understanding how particular his one tool is. It was missing some of the safety things. And these are things I'm talking about. Like, if you're not familiar with what that looks like, start with reputable companies, see what they look like, and then go compare to the Craigslist person. Not that that's an issue, but know what a safe place looks like to learn good habits.
exactly. Yeah. And the more digging you can do on a company, the better, right? Like if you can get a sample and a cross section of what their projects actually look like. So like visit their website, may not be up to date, but you might get an idea. Check out their profile hopefully they've got a profile on Project Network and they're showcasing their projects. So you can kind of look and see what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Failing that, check Instagram, check Facebook, like anywhere that you can find some examples. In terms of being, so that young apprentice, right? So those are some great tips in terms of narrowing down who to apply to, who to talk to. What does that young apprentice do to make sure that they have the best opportunity to get employed by a reputable company?
I think it starts with knowing first and foremost, when you're hired as an employee anywhere, skilled trades specifically, you are a solution to a problem. So that company has either, and this is a good thing to know, had they put that job posting up because they just have too much work and need another carpenter A, they've got a whole bunch of framers, need one more. Is it because they're growing into a new area and now they want to do interiors and then they need that trim carpenter and you're the first of that person to come in? Or is it because they're into some new niche business or someone's retiring? But knowing what you're solving for them is a good thing, because that tells you also, am I joining a company for which I am one of 6 framers framing roofs and I'm going to have a maybe supportive place, maybe not, but at least people doing the job alongside of me and I can learn things from them? Or am I that person coming in being expected to be the expert, right? The subject matter expert in interior trim, for instance. Those are very different responsibilities that role would have, and that would lend yourself to need different things. The person working along people needs to be a good team member, a good listener, and they could be a good hustle. The person running their own craft or own division in that company, let's say trim, you've got to know everything. And those are different experience levels and background, but also just personal, how you're built. So that's one thing I'd say. And the second is really understand what the job requirements are to be successful. There's the base learning in school. Cool. It's wonderful schools exist. It's wonderful apprenticeship exists. But often the things you learn in apprenticeship isn't, they're not controlled environments on a job site. You might be doing things that are really challenging with little instruction. So what do you need to be successful comes down to the role. The more you understand about the role, the business, and how they're set up to support you or not is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've talked about this on a previous episode as well, but this idea that I think as an especially as a new entrant, like if this is your first job, is ensuring that you know that the most important thing you need to do is to hustle. Like you need to be the hardest working person there. Um, in terms of getting some level experience, what would you recommend in terms of like we sort of talk about? I'd love to hear your take on this because I've always talked about doing any sort of, I wouldn't even call it a side job because you don't have a job yet, but like help build a shed, help build a fence, do something on the weekends. Maybe talk to me a little bit about that, like some strategies that you can take, and then being
Sure.
able to showcase that work.
Yeah. So there's actually a really good book we teach with. It's called Designing Your Life because your life is a wicked problem. There's no other Ian out there creating a software company and with a building background. They don't exist. So the way you try out this new career or build experience is your prototype. So rather than apply to 100 jobs and wait for the one that's going to hire you full time to cut roofs, how about we just prototype that? Can I go and, yeah, build a shed with my dad on the weekend? That's still organizing your project, getting material, doing a cut list, building something together, having it complete. That's a prototype. Going and working for someone for a week to even job shadow, paid or not, is a prototype. Working 6 weeks for someone, again, because someone is off on vacation, you're here to backfill, or you're subcontracting for them to do a small project. Those are ways of trying things out. And one, it builds experience, but two, it shows you, do I want to get really good at this? There are so many parts of skilled trades that you don't always have to be hucking bundles of shingles up to a roof if you want to be in roofing. You could be a drone pilot and do takeoffs for that company for their estimating division. You could work in their warranty division. We understand really the installation procedures for all these products. Like there's so many paths in construction that if you don't first prototype short experiences, and then as you're saying, to learn how to communicate that to others and say, hey, I've spent the past summer building these 6 things. I'm going to take pictures of all of this work. I'm going to put it on Project Network and I put it on a, ideally, the great thing about Project Network for this purpose is there's not pictures of your partner, your dog, and what you made for your birthday the day on the project feed. It's all projects. If you are still building on Instagram, which we promote our students to do as well, have a
Mhm.
separate channel for your own work
Yeah.
as a way to promote and have people look at what you're doing. Any experience of any size is important. If you went to apprenticeship, take pictures for your apprenticeship. If you did that, safety and rigging where you're hauled up to the ceiling wearing a harness on chains, take a picture of that. That tells me that worker has had some safety training. That's a valuable image to put on your feed, right? It doesn't always have to be award-winning renovations. You're showing someone, if you hire me and invest in me, I have spent time investing in myself and I have commitment to this craft. Here are at least 6 things I've tried on my own time to get some experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I will say, as somebody that formerly employed, well, I still technically employ lots of carpenters, but formerly was involved in the direct hiring of those carpenters. I loved to see somebody that did side projects. They invested in their education, right? So yes, take a course like what you teach, but do stuff on the weekend. Do side projects, like pick up phone, find home building, find some old copies and read it, right? Go on Project Network, connect with people, go on YouTube, watch videos, like whatever you need to do. But if you can showcase to me that you're spending more than the minimum required amount of time to improve your career, I'm more likely to hire that person over the person that's doing the minimum amount of time, right? Um, yeah.
100%. Especially if you're a small business and don't have deep team training budgets, you need
Yeah.
really that self starter.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. If I ask a student if they knew who Matt Risinger is, and the answer is there's a head shake, there's not a lot of learning they're doing outside of the classroom. Not that you have to know who everybody is. It's not that's not the question. But to not know who some of these excellent communicators are, professionals who are going to elevate the industry, Mike Holmes, etc. If you're not aware of if you're not aware of who they are, then you can't. This isn't a job you shove off at 5 o'clock on a Friday and go home. It is something you keep building and learning and getting better at.
Yeah. And the really, so speaking specifically about carpentry, the really good ones, the really good carpenters I've known, they have a passion for it. They truly do. I can't speak for all trades. I don't know. We talked about it the last time, like as an electrical apprentice, it's illegal to do to do side work, so you probably shouldn't do that. But like, I'm sure there's other pathways that you can do to increase your knowledge and over and above your day job.
Yeah,
Carpentry
and
is definitely one where you can. There's so many side projects you can do. Like you can be constantly working, constantly learning, right?
yeah, and to be fair, a lot of young carpenters work on the side because they want and have to.
Hmm.
The I can't say that a young carpenter being hired is being compensated at the rate that they really deserve. If you look at the billable rates of all skilled trades, if you're that carpenter who understands how foundations are poured and how they're set, and then you're setting sills, and then you're framing floors, you're coordinating with the plumber, electrician. There's a lot of stuff you understand, but our pay rates are often less than some of those other trades. So when you start, as a result, those rates are sometimes lower. Oh, yeah, you're driven to go do side projects because you kind of have to. That was me. After university, I had 3 jobs. I worked during the day for a company. I worked at nights at a bar in that case, and I worked at a design store on the weekends. I just needed a lot of help. And that's, I think, also coming out of any technical school right now, or even apprenticeship, you have to have enough savings to go and actually take off those 6 week school terms. And I think you do need side work. So that person's out there hustling. And if their side job is the thing they're trying to get better at, that for me is a big validator. If their side job is a job from high school, checking out groceries, okay, but can we just get you to do more of the thing and get better at it faster?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I want to turn to kind of close out this very briefly. I want you to give me, so we'll move away from apprentices. You're a teacher. We don't have to name the institution. That's up to you. And it's not about the institution, but I want you to talk to me quickly about what you need so that everybody understands the challenges here, what you need to do your job well and where those gaps are. Not that we're going to fix them, but I
Sure.
do want to, you sort of, when we were walking through prior to presenting to your students, you touched on a couple things with me. And as much as you're willing to share sort of publicly here, it was eye opening to me. I didn't understand sort of the sort of like institutional challenges. And I don't want to blame the institution. Like it's a funding thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, talk to
Yeah.
me about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk high level. I'd say every trade school out there has challenges. If you look just talking broadly, if you run any kind of institution, including a high school or a public school, it is less risk, and it is lower overhead to have a classroom with seats and desks and a whiteboard up front. That's same for teaching grade 6, teaching grade 12, or teaching at a college or university. Once you introduce having a shop environment, in our case, we have about 35,000 square feet. You're building physical things. Those spaces can fit less people in them to teach safely. Understandably, it's hard to teach. You can lecture to 100 people at once about art history. I can't teach 100 people at once how to use a skill saw safely. Even teaching 25 people on your own does your head in, but those are the numbers. So it means that space is going to have less people. Those spaces also have, as you understand, physical equipment, material, and storage. So what's interesting for most schools is this concept of like revenue per square foot. So, and this is if your company, your school does well or doesn't matter. It's your cost of goods sold, right? If you take more space, more materials framing materials, you're buying sheet goods for teaching millwork, you're buying filament for 3D printers, it kind of doesn't matter. You have a much higher cost of goods sold for about the same tuition rates. So it means your revenue per square foot, right? The students coming in are contributing some kind of tuition or payments divided amongst all your materials and your soft spaces. We are the lowest revenue producing square foot. That's just a thing to just get your head around. That's for any program that's not taught in a classroom. So that for one is a challenge. So what schools like ours and many skilled trades schools need across North America really is support from industry. If you believe in schools like ours and others doing well and supporting you with young graduates and talent and in training institutions, is schools always need support when they're doing well and when they're doing not so well. They can always use support. It's often those schools are led by a few individuals, a couple teachers, a couple coordinators. That's really what it comes down to is it's really people. And it's hard for that employer, sorry, for that teacher to go and find the companies who want to be helpful. It's really, I think, on companies to say, hey, it's not hard to find me. It's not hard to find that technical school in your area and go, let me just figure out who is the shop teacher. Can I reach out and offer some support for materials? Can I come in and do a presentation someday on what my company does or what careers in construction look like in this town? Can I talk with the manufacturer that I buy a lot from company X? I'm one of their influencers. Can I get in touch with the school and say, would you benefit by some either training from this group or material donation from this group? The answer is usually probably yes. And it's much easier for you to find that person because they're one teacher versus them going out and contacting 1,000 employers in the area and say, hey, can you be helpful to us? So that's what I'd say is schools always need help. It's easiest for you to go to find them
Okay.
because there's usually one of them in the area and see what they need.
Okay. So that's incredible. I didn't realize that. Like I would have thought that I shouldn't reach directly out to a shop teacher, that you'd need to go through like the college.
Do it.
So, okay. Okay.
Do it.
So,
I mean, yes, the college would love for you to go, but how do you know, depending on what school you're at, that it's this division, this person to talk about industry partnerships? Probably don't. But it's probably easy to find that shop teacher either through the school's website or through their LinkedIn or Project Network account and say, hey, if we want to get involved, how do we do that? And either they can say, I'm the person to talk to, or talk to Tom or Sally in the department X, and they have a way of doing that.
okay. So basically for anybody, just to close this out, for anybody listening, I was going to ask you, what is the number one thing that people could do to help out? And I'm assuming it's that, or is it?
100%.
Okay.
Find out the local trade school in your community, your town, or your city. Find the the program coordinator, or even any teacher in that division, and send them an email. Say, "I'd love to support with a time, training, or if you need any materials, how can I do that?" And that would be incredible for any teacher at any school across North America.
That's amazing. Okay. That I want to close with that advice because I think that's huge. So anybody listening here, re-listen to what Connor just said, but find your local trade school. If you value the trades and continuing education in the trades, and training young people for this career path, reach out to your local schools, see what you can do to help, because it doesn't need to be direct financial support. There are other things you can do to support that local institution for training the next generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think back to why we're here today, it's about building community. So if it's not financial, it's not time based, even to come in and talk about who you are and your path, and now they know a person in skilled trades in their area. They see you at a home show, they see you at a job site, they feel a sense of connection. So even coming in and just having them meet one person they didn't know before, you might be the only framer that they know now, but now they know a framer. Now they know someone they can actually connect with. So that in itself is really a gift.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, Connor, thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Thanks for
Um,
having me.
yeah, we'll end it there. Beauty.
Peace.